Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in the John Wooden room here in Mackey Arena. One of the players is using Mackey Arena to get some shots up here, had the music playing, so I'm been left looking for a new setting for my rap video and settled in here in the John Wooden room. That is not him pictured right there. He's over here on this part of the wall, not pictured, but that's one of his contemporaries. I don't know his name. Purdue loses 88 to 76. Yeah, 88 to 76 to number 13 Penn State. Obviously, a very disappointing loss for Purdue. Can dissect a lot of different things about this game. Purdue's effort, Purdue's defense, whatever it may be, but it's really hard to look at this game beyond one thing and one thing more than all else. Shooting. I mean, as I said the other day, or probably some other time. I don't know when I said it, but it's often oversimplification about basketball when you just say this team shot better, so they won. This was, your classic example. Penn State made every three attempted. It seemed like Purdue not so much, and that was the singular biggest difference in this game. Penn State was 14 of 26, but they shot the hell out of the ball to open the game, and that's where Purdue has been so good in this place, was that first 5 minutes of the game. So it's not just the shooting, it's the timely shooting. They set a tone for this game right away. Purdue was playing from behind the entire game. Penn State made shots every time they needed to make shots, and that's exactly what Purdue just did at Indiana. So it's not unprecedented for that sort of thing to happen on the road. Obviously, Purdue just did it 72 hours ago, whatever it was. But conversely, not only did Purdue start 0 of 8 in the first half, 0 of 9 total, and finish 4 of 17, but when Purdue needed to make shots, Purdue didn't make shots. I don't have the times, I don't have the circumstances here in my notes. I'll have to go back and look through them to see if I can even read them. Most likely I cannot. But there were 3 shots Purdue had in situations where they had it down to 6, had it down to 4, had it down to 5, whatever it was. 3 open threes came their way, 2 by Sasha Stefanovic and I believe 1 by Matt Harms, where had those shots gone, I think that would have torn the roof off this place. It would have potentially triggered one of those game-changing runs that might have changed the complexion of this game moving forward. If Penn State was ever going to be fazed by playing on the road here, and clearly Penn State showed they were not terribly vulnerable to that sort of thing, given how they played to start the game, those were the moments right there. Purdue needed to make that shot at the right time, couldn't do it. Meanwhile, Penn State made every shot they needed to make, and the outcome reflected both teams' ability or inability to make those shots at those junctures where those shots were most important. So, the biggest thing about this game is, to me, is just that sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail, however you want to term it. Penn State made shots, Purdue didn't. That I think that's pretty much that's the story as much as anything. But that being said, even if Purdue makes those shots it needed to make in those moments, it still needs to piece together stops enough to make the sorts of runs it needed to make to really change the complexion of this game. So dealing with a lot of hypotheticals there by talking about those runs. Purdue wasn't good enough defensively, obviously. This was one of those nights where one team is playing offense at kind of a magic level. The college basketball buzzsaw is real, and it's not always the home team doing it, apparently. But Purdue obviously didn't play a great defensive game either. I think, to start the second half, Purdue needed to get some stops to get back in this, and that's when they couldn't stop Mike Watkins, who's a senior who's not accustomed to playing very much against Purdue because he's, as Pat Chambers reminded everyone after the game, he seems to always be in foul trouble against Purdue. Being punished, being brought off the bench to start games as he did tonight. But they could not stop Mike Watkins. Big physical guys sometimes give Purdue problems because if they're taller than Travion Williams, that might be a bit of an issue for him. If they're stronger and they're more physical than Matt Harm, sometimes that can be an issue for him. Whether it was the guy guarding him that was the problem, or whether it was just simply Mike Watkins making plays, the ball bouncing a certain way, a combination thereof, I don't know. But Purdue couldn't get stops on the three-point shooters and couldn't get stops on Mike Watkins when they needed them to piece together those runs. So me talking about timely shooting might be a little bit of a red herring here because Purdue might not have been good enough defensively anyway to make those sorts of runs that I'm kind of getting at here. Obviously not a great performance by Purdue by any stretch of the imagination, a great performance by Penn State. I think one thing that should be kept in mind here is that Penn State won 6 games in a row prior to tonight for a reason. Penn State is 13th in the country for a reason. This was very similar to the Illinois game in the sense that Penn State is a very good team that backed down from nothing or anyone in this game, played really hard, made shots, and they're good. They're really good. I didn't feel like Lamar Stevens really impacted this game all that much either, and he's a first-team All-Big Ten player. This was everybody else. This was all their shooters around him. They didn't even have Myron Jones, who's their second leading scorer. This is just a really impressive performance by Penn State. This is the Penn State team that just won at Michigan State. This is the Penn State team that just beat Minnesota behind 33 by Stevens. They're obviously showing that they're a really good team. They're a really good team on the road in a league where not a lot of people have been really good on the road, and they're really complete. They're really deep. They were carried by Stevens against Minnesota. They were carried by everybody else here tonight. I think that really says something about what they've been able to build at Penn State. For Purdue, what does this mean? This means that Purdue lost to a really good team in the midst of a magical shooting night. And I don't know if this necessarily represents the halting altogether of the momentum Purdue seemed to have built, or if this was Purdue simply losing one game to a good team on a special shooting night. I guess we'll wait and see how Purdue responds to this. The word complacent came up from one of the players after the game. I never know what to make of that stuff because sometimes guys don't know how to answer questions necessarily, so they just perhaps sometimes say things that kind of come to mind. Matt Painter seemed to bristle at the use of the term complacent, in typical Painter fashion after a loss when he's a little on edge. And, he doesn't know what they'd have to be complacent about. This 3-game winning streak didn't even get them into the NCAA tournament for certain. They still have a long way to go. Tonight would have been a really big step in that direction. But obviously, Penn State is that sort of resume game for a reason because Penn State is really, really good. Purdue has not arrived by any means. Purdue cannot take Mackey Arena for granted. Purdue has had some pretty memorable performances here this season against Virginia, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Iowa, and that reality coupled with the fact Purdue been playing pretty well here lately seemed to give you pretty good reason to expect, a pretty positive outcome here tonight. But again, Penn State is really good, and they showed it tonight more so than they probably have in any other game this season, perhaps other than winning at Michigan State a couple weeks ago. I know Michigan State is mid-free fall, but that's still a damn good win, and probably laid the groundwork for Penn State winning this game as well. So we'll kind of see where Purdue goes from here. Ohio State's up next. Purdue did just show it can win a road game, but this game here at home obviously leaves it with much introspection to be done, much to look at with a critical eye kind of moving forward. Purdue's got to be better than this. It knows that, but Purdue also, more importantly, needs to make sure that opponents don't hit 14 of 26 threes when they're 33% shooting teams for the season. To me, that's the single biggest thing about this game. I'm not calling it a fluke. I'm just saying that's just what happens sometimes. Maybe that was the root cause of tonight. We don't know because a lot of other things kind of went into this. But I also don't think this is, scorched earth for Purdue by any means. I think they've put themselves in a much better position now than they were a couple weeks ago. And we'll kind of see where they go from here. But got to win games from here on out. You have to beat Indiana here. You have to beat Michigan here. You have to beat Rutgers here. you got to get one of these 3 road games at least, whether it's Ohio State this weekend, Wisconsin a couple days later, or Iowa in the second to last game of the year, or the last game of the year, whatever it is. Purdue's got work to do, but Purdue has shown it can be a good team. Maybe this has a positive kind of impact now. I don't know. We'll kind of see where Purdue goes from here, and I'm talking in circles at this point. So I probably ought to just cut this off. So from the John Wooden Club in Mackey Arena, this is Brian Neubert from GoldenBlack.com following Purdue's 88-76 loss to number 13 Penn State. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials. However did you process our materials? And whatever room those materials are coming from. So thanks a lot, everybody. We'll talk to you again this weekend from Columbus, Ohio, whatever they call their arena now, Value City Arena at the Schottenstein Center, if you're not into the whole brevity thing. So have a good night, everybody.